Welcome to the Point. We are happy, first of all, to be back in the studio. It seems like it has been forever, and it seems almost that long since you and I have been sitting here. Senator Debbie Stabenow, senior senator from the state, thank you so much for being here.
It's great, and is it really you? It's not a hologram or something,
no,
you're not on Zoom.
We're not on Zoom. And we've got so much to talk about, and as always, limited time. So I want to start with something that I know you worked on very closely when it comes to inflation. I always harken back to the days, for those of us old enough to remember inflation from back then, the Jerry Ford era, that the government has only limited things they can do. But you and your Democratic colleagues came up with the Inflation Reduction Act. Tell me, to the degree that it's developed, that what do you think that's going to do?
Well, it's very important. It's going to do a number of things, but one is directly relate to costs that people are experiencing every day. And the truth of the matter is, as you know, I've been working on the issue of prescription drugs for a long time, particularly saying Medicare should negotiate group prices. The largest purchaser in the country is Medicare, and they've been barred by law from negotiating the best price, which is crazy. The VA negotiates for veterans, and they pay 40% less. So under the new law, they're going to begin to negotiate. It's going to take a little time to make that fully happen, but while that is beginning to happen, starting in January, anyone on Medicare who's on insulin is going to be able to have their out-of-pocket costs capped at $35 a month. This is a very big deal, $35 a month for insulin. And then we're going to phase in a total cap on out-of-pocket costs for folks on Medicare to $2,000 a year, which is also a very big deal. The average cost right now is $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year out of pocket. And so that's important. Also, every vaccine, whether it's a shingles vaccine, whether it's the COVID vaccine, or the flu, is going to be free for anyone on Medicare as well, which is also important. So hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in savings. Eventually it will be thousands of dollars in savings for seniors. By the way, we pay the highest prices in the world. And our companies have the highest profits in the world. And so that's a longer discussion, but you know, it's about time. Second thing is energy costs. There's going to be in this bill the ability for people to bring down their energy costs, more use of biofuels, which at the pump are about $1 less on the price per gallon. We're going to see an average of $1,000 per household on energy costs as well. So cost reduction, really important part of this. And by the way, this with the CHIPS bill means that those microchips that have been holding us up from not only getting the vehicles built and out the door, but appliances in Michigan and all kinds of other things, bringing the chip manufacturing back to the United States here is going to help lower the costs both on new cars and used cars.
I want to talk for a minute about what you and I were just talking about. We've got a lot of other issues to talk about, but talk to me about the pace over the past 20 months or so, because a lot has changed, a lot has happened, and I point out this in all fairness, a lot of it has been Democratic initiatives alone, but tell me what that's been like.
Well, it's been, I would say, sort of half and half. Two big things that we did that we couldn't get Republican colleagues to join us, and then other things where they did, like the infrastructure bill, the chips manufacturing, the veterans expansion in terms of burn pit, healthcare issues. There's been a bunch of things bipartisan, and then a couple of big things that were not, unfortunately. But let me say, 20 months ago, think about it, we were all Zooming, not because we wanted to, but because of what was happening here. And children weren't in school, people weren't able to work, small businesses, restaurants, not able to operate. And so the first thing that happened 20 months ago is we put our heads down to focus on how to save lives, how to get children safely back to school, how to support small businesses and so on. So that happened, and unfortunately the bill that took that to happen did not have any Republican support. But then moving forward, we said, okay, we're going to rebuild America. We got to rebuild the country. And boy, is this good news for us in Michigan, because it's not just roads and bridges, and now we know that the internet, high-speed internet, is infrastructure, as we have all learned. But things like the Grand Rapids Airport, which is so important, where we're putting millions of dollars in to support what needs to be done there, as well as all the orange barrels around Kent County and beyond that we are all traveling to see. But you know, what we have seen is we want to bring jobs home. And we want more manufacturing, 660,000 manufacturing jobs out of 10 million total jobs in the last 20 months, the highest amount of jobs within that kind of a period ever in the country. And so, but then we move on forward. It's been busy. We did gun safety. We did the largest investment in community mental health ever. We've supported our veterans who've been waiting, you know, who've been exposed to toxic burn pits, and then the Inflation Reduction Act and all the great, and not only did I work on prescription drugs, but you know, not only electric vehicles, but manufacturing, battery manufacturing, EV manufacturing. Those tax credits were things that I authored that are in there. And every time you say make things and manufacturing, you say Michigan. So,
talk to me a little bit about the mental health component that you and Senator from Missouri worked on, because that's been going on for a while, and it kind of came to an interesting nexus because it is included in the gun bill. But tell me about that.
It is. This is really important, and you know, I've always said we need to fund health care above the neck the same as health care below the neck. But for mental health and addiction, we've tended to fund it with grants instead of part of the healthcare system. So Senator Blunt, who is has been such a wonderful partner with me, we decided a number of years ago, actually almost 10 years ago, to put in a bill called Excellence in Mental Health to set high quality standards for what we call behavioral health, and then fund it as healthcare in the community, like we fund health centers. We knew it was going to take a lot to get that up and going. We had to prove it, so we set up demonstration states. Michigan had become one of those, a total of 10 demonstration states. We were blown away by the results that if you really fund community care, you keep people out of the jail, you keep them out of the emergency department, you keep people from being homeless on the street. So when the gun bill came up, everybody was saying we should do something on mental health and sort of just throwing out ideas. And Roy and I said, wait a minute, we have something that's evidence-based, proven, you know, supported. Let's just expand it. And so in this bill, we now expand nationwide what has something that should have been done a long, long time ago, quality comprehensive care. Right now we have 35 clinics in Michigan, several in West Michigan, in Grand Rapids and Muskegon and Ludington and Kalamazoo and Benton Harbor and so on, and in Holland. I mean, we have several, and we are going to expand those even more, and they will be permanent, not subject to start and stop grants, and we will give people the support and the help they need with mental illness and addiction as well as physical illness.
Do you think, and I find it hard to find a lot of good things that came out of the pandemic, but do you think because of the mental health stress that was almost universal during the pandemic, that helped people focus on getting a bill like that you've been working on for a decade? It
did, and I hate to say it takes a global pandemic to do that, but also the stress on our children in so many different ways. And by the way, part of this funding, in addition to comprehensive behavioral health clinics, is school-based health clinics. This is another piece I've been working on for a long time, supporting children in school, supporting families. And so I do think that the stresses, the isolation that people felt really made a difference and caused everybody to focus both on that and the need for high-speed internet. And a lot of what we've done is telehealth as well in mental health, as well as other health care. And so we learned some things coming out of the pandemic, and hopefully we put those to good use.
If I remember correctly, 22 years ago, the first time I met you, we were standing on the stairs of a church on a Sunday morning, and I said, why are you running for the U.S. Senate? And one of the first things you talked to me about was the Great Lakes.
Yes.
That's continued to be a theme with you, and that has also taken some moves forward during this past couple of years. Tell me where we are with preserving protecting and hopefully keeping local the Great Lakes.
Yes. Oh no, we're not. Nobody's putting a pipeline up to the Great Lakes. I mean, there have been, various small diversions that have happened on things, but I've said to my colleagues, there's no way that you're going to put, a pipeline, take it somewhere. If you want our water, move to Michigan. So, but we are actually in, knock on wood, in extraordinarily good position in terms of resources. Now, we've got a lot of stresses and challenges from invasive species to the fact that the Great Lakes are actually warming faster than the oceans in terms of the climate crisis. This is a really big deal. But what we have now in the infrastructure bill that we passed, I was able to get a $1 billion investment, largest single one-time investment in help to clean up the Great Lakes we've ever gotten. And it's going to allow us to clean up 9 different, what we call areas of concern. We've already done that in White Lake up by Muskegon. There's other areas where we couldn't swim. There's pollution, runoff, toxic algae, couldn't fish. So we're going to have a massive effort around Michigan and the Great Lakes to clean up these areas. And in addition to that, through the Inflation Reduction Act, with my agriculture and conservation hat on, we have major investments to work with farmers on doing things that they want to do. Keep soil on the ground, don't let the pesticide, the fertilizer run off into the river. Do things that are going to reduce carbon, that are going to support our forests and so on, but at the same time are going to make a big difference in protecting our Great Lakes.
One of the things that we don't know is the challenges that will come in the future. And we've only got about 60 seconds, but there has been a lot of money put towards a lot of these initiatives. Another 30, 45 seconds we have left. How confident are you that we can sustain that kind of spending?
I think these are important investments. They are not necessarily ongoing investments, but they are important. We got to jumpstart manufacturing. We got to bring jobs home. This is partnership with the private sector, partnership with our farmers. I think these funds were critical. The Inflation Reduction Act fully paid for it. $300 million on the national debt being paid down. But they are, in my judgment, one-time investments that are very important and are already stimulating the private sector.
Senator, there's another hour we could do, and I hope when you have time you'll come back and see us. Thanks for being here.
I will do that. Thank you.
We'll be back with more To the Point in just a moment. Welcome back to the Point. As we continue to look at some of the open seats in the State House, this new district stands out. The 38th is a narrow strip of lakeshore that runs from roughly Saugatuck all the way to the state line. The 2 major party candidates for the seat are Democrat Joey Andrews and Republican Kevin Whiteford. I talked to both of them about their background and why they're running. Talk to me a little bit about your background. What have you done up to now, and what gets you involved in a race for the State House?
Yeah, so I graduated from Wayne State Law School in 2013, kind of depth of the recession, not a lot of great law jobs to be had at the time. So I moved back home where my parents' small business was struggling at the tail end of the recession, kind of put some of the know-how to work that I just gotten in law school, helped restructure and get the businesses back on their feet. And then around 2018, I had started a small solar installation company and started getting a little more involved in politics locally, and just kind of started recognizing that the area that I grew up in here in St. Joe has, it sort of started to change from the community that I, knew as a child. Starting to see tourism take over a lot more, harder for people to afford houses, raise families. And I've always wanted this community to be the place that I could raise my kids in, the same way I was raised here, and maybe hopefully one day retire in too. And so I made a run for the State House then, unsuccessfully. Went to work for the Biden and Peters campaign in 2020, and then the Michigan AFL-CIO, which is where I work now as a policy analyst. And my run this time around is very much the same as the one, that brought me here last time, that I want to see this community be a place where, myself, my friends, my family can live, retire, grow up, raise our kids,
One of the things you mentioned, and this is a common theme, a lot of places people are looking for affordable housing. But here, and I'm taking a little bit of a leap because you know the area better than I, but because there are so many desirable areas for perhaps people who don't live here full-time to buy homes, that's got to put pressure on housing prices as well. And tourism will help drive up those housing rates, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big part of it is, you've got second homeowners, but also the vacation rental industry has exploded here, I think more than in most places. And we have, it's very expensive to build housing now, so the housing stock is dwindling. And as these kind of out-of-state investors have come in and bought up a lot of the housing for vacation rentals, it's pushing residents out, which hurts the schools, makes it harder to find people to work the small businesses, makes the job market harder. And so, I think we're trying to find a way to find a balance, because we know tourism is important here. It's a big part of our economy. But if it pushes everybody who lives here out, then you don't really have anything left.
So how do you change that? I mean, it's a little bit supply and demand.
Absolutely, and so I think part of it is making it so we can balance the scales a little bit. So I think, if you have somebody who, for instance, lives here and maybe owns like one rental property, that's fine. They probably keep up on it. They monitor the property, take care of it. The problem is when you get these out-of-state interests that buy up all the properties, they run them like hotels, but they're not really regulated like hotels. So that's where like the safety standards get out of control. You end up with like these party houses that put a lot of strain on the emergency services locally. So my thought is, we want to keep as much control local as we can with the municipalities, but give them the ability to more precisely regulate and discern between individuals and, these big companies that are kind of skirting the hotel regulations to run sort of these like cottage hotel industries.
Beyond that, taking a look at Lansing, and I know as a policy analyst you do, what else would you like to do, perhaps more based on the state, not just the district?
Yeah, so I think, repealing right to work is a really big priority for me and I think many of our colleagues. Reinstating the prevailing wage, just giving working families in Michigan a boost and a leg up again. Michigan in a lot of ways was the state that sort of like built the middle class in this country, like launched the auto industry. And I think we lost a lot of that over time. And I feel like, this state is my home where I grew up. I'd love to see us get back to that place again.
When you talk about doing away with right to work, it was a remarkable set of circumstances that came around to be put in place in the first place. How big a lift is that, do you think?
So I think if we retake the majority, I think it'll probably be bill number 1 that hits the floor. I think that, at least from my conversations, that's something that the Democrats, and I think maybe even a few Republicans are recognizing that, maybe this didn't go the way they thought it was going to go. And especially since COVID, I think a lot of workers and a lot of families are recognizing that they don't have the protections that they thought they did, that maybe their boss doesn't care about them quite so much as they thought they did. And these protections, that labor unions fought for are important.
You've got 30 seconds. You've just knocked on somebody's door. What do you tell them? Why do you tell them to vote for you?
I grew up here. I'm a local kid in a lot of ways. I care about this community. I want to live here, retire here, raise my kids here, and I want it to be a place that my friends and family can retire and live into, and always going to be a voice for this community in Lansing.
Republican Kevin Whiteford talked to us about his candidacy as well. Talk to me about your background. What have you done up to now that you think helps prepare you to run for State House? And tell me a little bit about why you're running for State House.
Well, the first question's easy. I got out of college in 1986. I've worked 110-hour weeks for 11 years. Now, I know a lot of people say, wow, that's a lot of hours. Yeah. And I'm not an advocate for somebody doing that, but you can't take away the experience I gained when I did that. When I was 26 years old, I was hired as a tax director of a $500 million company in 50 states and 33 countries. You don't get that job unless you earned the job, and I earned it. I did that job for 5 years, worked with one of the big 8 CFOs, and again, I was working 110 hours, which is why there was 11 years after college when I worked those kind of hours. I finally got to 1997. My wife said, hey, that's a lot of hours and a lot of years. And I didn't blame her. She happily stayed with me, which is amazing, and I've been with her for 38 years. But the bottom line is I started my own business in 1997. Started a little tax practice. To back up, I mean, I am a CPA. I have a master's in tax law. I have an accounting degree, of course. When I was going through college, I was one of the only athletes going through college who earned an accounting degree and graduated in 4 years as a Division I basketball player. I mean, it says a lot just because why I worked hard to do that. So anyways, I started the businesses. I started a tax practice in 1997, and then in 1999, I started a financial investment firm. In 2000, I started a real estate company. What did I do with those? Well, they grew over time. In 2007, I said, you know what? I love tax. I'm good at it, but you know what? I could only do so many businesses. So I stuck with real estate and the financial investment practice. With those two businesses, those are the two businesses that have flourished over the years, and I now have my two sons in the businesses and their spouses. We also have many other people in, but those are the family members, and I'm blessed to have that. The experience that I gained in doing that was I've worked with tens of thousands of small businesses, period. Small businesses, you know, when you back up, the tax department that I ran in 50 states and 33 countries was owned and operated by two guys who started a business in 1954 out of a garage. When I took that job on, they were still a subchapter S. You know, and it's such a cool story. And it is such a small world. Just recently, one of the siblings of that family moved into South Haven, right where I live now. What's really cool about it is it's just because of my hard work and my tenacity over the years that that sibling actually goes around and says, hey man, this guy was well loved by my dad. He was a hard worker.
How does that translate into where you are now? I know you've been involved in politics for a while, but how do you take that experience and transfer it into your run for office?
I can tell you this. Yeah, the 38th district, which is what I'm running for, is from northern Saugatuck Township to the Indiana border. It is loaded with small businesses. You know, when they put that together, I said, I told my wife, I said, you know, Mary, this is me. I am going to be the best candidate, not only in this area, but in the state of Michigan, to handle a job like this. What's really cool about it is I've knocked on 13,000 doors in the primary, myself, personally. The team did 25,803. I learned that the businesses, there's more businesses than I thought. Not only are there small businesses in each one of these communities and the owners, but the retirees are small business owners too, from either here, Chicago, or wherever. And it's really neat because I understand their language. I understand when I started my business in 1997, I cashed out my 401k completely, cashed everything out. 4 or 5 months into the business, I ran out of money. I needed $5,000 desperately, and my father-in-law lent me the money. So I understand what it takes to start a small business. And I know some people might say, hey, you're not a small business anymore. Well, I started there, and that's where I am. And I understand small businesses. So definitely my background, running this job, my experience, I mean, I've been doing it for over 35 years. I'm going to be the candidate that's going to bring that experience to the table, not only for this district, right, but also the state of Michigan. So what else do we need to do? We need to bring businesses here, not only to the state of Michigan, but this district. And I will be that advocate, which is why I was exclusively endorsed by not only the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, but the Detroit Chamber of Commerce, because they said, this guy knows how to bring business, and I'm going to do that. So,
let's say you just come up to somebody's door, you got 30 seconds to make your case because everybody's busy. What do you tell them? Why should they vote for you?
Hey, I'm a CPA. I'm an accountant. I'm a guy you can trust. I've worked very hard for over 35 years helping out small businesses. I've been a huge community advocate here in South Haven. I'm going to be that community advocate all the way up and down this district. I know that was a concern in Berrien County. It shouldn't be, though, because I'm down there. I'm everywhere. And I will be, and I will represent not only the Berrien County people, but the Van Buren County and the Allegan County people.
The 38th House District is just one of many races that voters all over the state will be deciding this year. We'll be back with final thought to the point. With so many races in all new districts, now would be a great time to go to woodtv.com and see exactly which candidates and issues you will be voting on. We'll see you here next week with a special edition of To the Point.